Tonight, before sleep gently finds you, I want to ask you something. How much are you carrying that no longer needs to be carried? Not the weight upon your shoulders, not the work you completed today, not the things you can touch with your hands, but the invisible things, the conversation that keeps replaying, the mistake you wish had never happened, the goodbye you never expected, the dream that unfolded differently than you imagined, the future that asks too many questions, and the past that sometimes refuses to whisper. Instead, it shouts. Many people believe that peace comes from solving every problem, from finding every answer, from fixing every broken memory. But tonight, you are invited to discover something much quieter. Perhaps peace is not found by holding tighter. Perhaps it is found by opening your hands. So, as you settle into your bed, allow your breathing to slow. Let your shoulders soften. There is nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to accomplish. Only this moment, only this breath, only this gentle story. Tonight's journey begins in a place where the mountains meet the clouds, where ancient forests have stood for centuries, and where one traveler believed that letting go meant losing everything, until he discovered the greatest freedom of all. Long ago, in a valley hidden beyond 7 mountain ridges, there was a village that almost never appeared on maps. Not because it was magical, not because it wished to remain secret, but because very few people traveled that far anymore. The road leading there was narrow. It curved through forests of cedar and pine. It crossed streams so clear that every stone beneath the water could be counted. The journey required patience, and those who hurried often turned back before arriving. The villagers believed this was not an accident. The mountain welcomes only those who have slowed enough to notice it. Among the people who once lived, there was an old craftsman named Haru. Haru was known for carving wooden bowls, unlike any others. His bowls were simple, without jewels, without paint, without decoration. Yet people crossed mountains just to hold one in their hands. They often asked him the same question. "What makes your work so peaceful?" Haru would smile, then answer, "It is not what I carve into the wood. It is what I carve away." Most visitors believed he was speaking about woodworking. Very few realized he was speaking about life. One autumn afternoon, as crimson leaves drifted slowly through the valley, a young traveler named Ken arrived at Haru's small workshop. Dust covered his boots. His backpack was worn. His eyes carried the unmistakable look of someone who had walked a long way. Without ever feeling like he had arrived, Haru looked up from his work. He noticed something immediately. Ken carried only one small backpack, yet somehow he looked exhausted. The old craftsman poured 2 cups of warm tea. He handed one to the young traveler. Neither spoke for several quiet moments. Steam curled gently into the cool autumn air. Finally, Haru smiled. "You seem very tired." Ken nodded slowly. "I have rested many times, but I have not felt rested for years." The old craftsman did not answer. He simply waited. Sometimes, silence is the safest place for truth to appear. After a while, Ken looked down into his cup. "I left home, hoping I would leave my worries behind. I have traveled through villages, across rivers, over mountains. I have changed where I sleep, what I eat, the people around me." He paused. "But every morning, My worries wake before I do. The breeze carried a handful of maple leaves across the wooden porch. Haru watched them dance for a moment before speaking. Do you know why leaves fall? Ken looked up. Because the seasons change. Haru nodded gently. Yes, but also because the tree knows something. The young traveler waited. The tree understands that what must leave creates space for what will one day return. Ken frowned slightly. I don't understand. The old craftsman smiled. I know. That is why you are here. The afternoon sunlight grew warmer. Somewhere beyond the workshop, a stream whispered over smooth stones. The scent of cedar filled the air. Haru stood slowly. He picked up a small wooden bowl that had not yet been finished. Its surface was rough, uneven, still carrying more wood than necessary. He placed it gently into Ken's hands. Tell me, what do you see? Ken turned the bowl carefully. I see a bowl that isn't finished. Haru nodded. What makes it unfinished? Ken thought for a moment. There is still too much wood. The old craftsman smiled. Exactly. Then he looked into the young traveler's eyes. And what makes a peaceful life unfinished? Ken opened his mouth to answer, but no words came. The old craftsman picked up his carving knife. He did not begin cutting. Instead, he placed the knife back on the table. Tomorrow morning, we will begin. But tonight, there is something more important. Ken looked puzzled. What could be more important than learning? Haru's smile became even softer. Learning how to stop carrying the knife before learning how to use it. The evening light slowly settled across the valley. Long shadows stretched between the cedar trees. The first stars began appearing above the mountains. And without realizing it, Ken had already taken the first step toward discovering the secret of letting go. The first light of morning arrived quietly, not all at once, but little by little. A pale ribbon of gold appeared beyond the eastern mountains. Mist rested gently above the stream. Tiny drops of dew clung to every blade of grass. The valley seemed to awaken with remarkable patience. No bird hurried its first song. No flower rushed to greet the sun. Everything unfolded in its own perfect time. Ken had barely slept. His body had rested, but his thoughts had wandered through the night like travelers who could not find their way home. Memories had visited. Questions had arrived. Old conversations had replayed themselves. Even here, in one of the quietest places he had ever seen, his mind remained busy. When he stepped outside the small guest room, Haru was already awake. The old craftsman sat upon the wooden porch. A simple kettle rested beside him. Steam curled upward in slow, graceful spirals. He looked toward the mountains without speaking. Ken sat beside him. For several minutes, neither said a word. Only the birds spoke. Only the breeze moved through the cedar branches. Finally, Haru poured tea into 2 small wooden cups. He handed one to Ken. The tea was warm, earthy, comforting. After taking a small sip, Haru asked quietly, "How did you sleep?" Ken smiled weakly. "My bed was peaceful. My mind was not." The old craftsman nodded. As expected. Ken looked surprised. "You knew?" Haru chuckled softly. Most travelers believe changing places will quiet the mind. They discover the mind enjoys traveling too. Ken lowered his eyes. "I thought leaving home would leave my worries behind. And yet, they seem to know every road I choose." Haru watched a maple leaf drift slowly across the yard. The wind carries leaves. The heart carries memories. Neither stops simply because we wish it to. The old craftsman stood. Come, we have work to do. Behind the workshop stood a small storage shed. Inside were stacks of cedar, walnut, cherry, and maple wood. Each piece had been carefully arranged. Nothing seemed wasted. Nothing appeared forgotten. Haru walked past every shelf. Instead of choosing a beautiful piece of wood, he reached into a dark corner. There rested an old traveler's backpack. It looked worn. Its leather had cracked with age. The straps had been repaired many times. Dust covered its surface. Haru gently lifted it, then handed it to Ken. It is heavier than it looks. Ken took the backpack. Immediately, his shoulders dropped. It was surprisingly heavy. What is inside? Haru smiled. Walk with it. Ken frowned. Where? Only around the garden. Though confused, he obeyed. The garden path curved gently around the workshop. It was not long, only a few hundred steps. At first, the backpack felt manageable, but as he continued walking, its weight became more noticeable. His shoulders tightened. His breathing became shorter. By the time he returned, he gladly placed it upon the ground. He rubbed his aching shoulders. What was the purpose of that? Haru asked calmly. Was the path difficult? No. Was the distance long? No. Then why are you tired? Ken looked toward the backpack. Because of the weight. Haru nodded, then asked one more question. When did the backpack become heavy? Ken answered immediately. The moment I picked it up. The old craftsman smiled gently. Did it? Ken hesitated. He thought more carefully. No, it became heavier the longer I carried it. Haru's eyes brightened. Exactly. He slowly sat beside the backpack. So many burdens in life are like this. They are not unbearable because they exist. They become unbearable because we refuse to set them down. Ken remained silent. Those words settled somewhere deep inside him. The old craftsman carefully opened the backpack. Inside, there were only ordinary stones. Smooth river stones. Nothing valuable, nothing unusual. One by one, Haru placed them upon the ground. This stone, he said, is regret. Another. This one is resentment. Another. Guilt. Another. Fear. Another. Expectations. Another. The need to always be understood. Another. The need to always be right. Another. The fear of disappointing others. Soon, the backpack became empty. Haru lifted it easily with one hand, then handed it back to Ken. Try again. Ken slipped it onto his shoulders. It felt almost weightless. He laughed quietly. It is completely different. Haru nodded. The backpack did not change. The road did not change. You changed what you carried. The morning sun climbed higher. Golden light spilled across the workshop floor. Dust floated lazily through the air. Haru picked up one of the smooth stones. He turned it slowly in his hand. For many years, I believed life was asking me to become stronger. He smiled. But eventually, I realized life was asking me to become lighter. Ken listened carefully. How? The old craftsman placed the stone back on the earth. Strength carries everything. Wisdom knows what no longer needs carrying. Those words remained in the silence between them. No explanation followed. None was needed. Later that morning, they walked toward the nearby stream. The water moved gently over smooth rocks. Sunlight danced across its surface. Haru knelt beside the current. He picked up a small stick, then placed it gently into the flowing water. The stick floated away. No struggle, no hesitation. It simply followed the current. Haru asked, "Did the stream lose something?" Ken shook his head. "No." "Did the stick become angry because the stream kept moving?" "No." The stream simply continued. Haru smiled. "Exactly." Then he looked toward the flowing water. Many people spend years standing in a river, trying to hold on to the same leaf. Ken watched a yellow leaf drift slowly downstream. It circled once around a small rock, then continued. Soon, it disappeared beyond the bend. He realized the stream never asked it to stay. The leaf never apologized for leaving. Neither resisted. Both simply followed their nature. As afternoon approached, the workshop filled once more with the scent of fresh cedar. Haru finally picked up his carving knife. He handed another one to Ken. "This is the first lesson." He placed the unfinished bowl upon the table. Creating beauty is not about adding more. It is about gently removing what was never meant to remain. Ken carefully held the block of wood. He did not carve immediately. Instead, he quietly remembered the backpack, the stones, the stream, the drifting leaf. Perhaps, he thought, the same was true of the heart. Perhaps peace was never something that needed to be added. Perhaps it had always been there, hidden beneath everything he refused to put down. Outside, the breeze carried another maple leaf through the open workshop door. It landed softly beside the unfinished bowl. Neither Haru nor Ken moved it. They simply watched, as if the valley itself had quietly agreed with the lesson. The following morning arrived wrapped in silver mist. The valley was quieter than before. Even the birds seemed to sing more softly, as though they wished to honor the stillness that lingered between the mountains. Ken stepped outside carrying the unfinished wooden bowl. He had spent much of the previous evening carving. Not much, only a few careful strokes. Each cut had been slow, intentional, patient. Haru noticed immediately. "You carved less." Ken smiled. "I think I finally understood." The old craftsman looked at the bowl. "What did you understand?" Ken ran his fingers along the smooth cedar. "I used to believe beauty came from doing more." He paused. "Now I wonder if it comes from knowing when to stop." Haru's eyes warmed. "The wood is beginning to teach you." He stood. "Today, we will leave the workshop." They followed a narrow trail climbing gently through the forest. Morning sunlight filtered through ancient cedar branches. Tiny droplets of dew sparkled like scattered stars upon the ferns. The air smelled of damp earth and pine. Neither hurried. Neither filled the silence with conversation. Only their footsteps, only the wind, only the distant sound of running water. After nearly an hour, the forest opened. Ahead stood an old wooden bridge. Its beams were weathered by countless seasons. Moss covered its railings. Wildflowers bloomed beside its entrance. Beneath it, a wide river flowed quietly toward the sea. Haru stopped. "This bridge is older than either of us." Ken rested his hand upon the worn wood. "It feels peaceful." "It has learned patience," Haru replied. They crossed halfway, then stopped. From the center of the bridge, the entire valley unfolded before them. The river shimmered beneath the morning sun. Mountains rose gently beyond the trees. Clouds drifted lazily across the blue sky. It felt as though time itself had slowed. Haru leaned lightly against the railing. "Tell me, when you crossed this bridge, did you bring the path behind you?" Ken laughed softly. "Of course not. The path stayed where it was. And yet, Haru continued. So many people tried to carry yesterday into today." Ken became quiet. The old craftsman pointed behind them. "The road we walked still exists. It simply no longer needs our feet." Then he pointed ahead. "And the road before us cannot be walked while we remain standing here." The river flowed steadily beneath them, never pausing beneath the bridge, never turning back, only moving, always moving. Haru reached into the pocket of his robe. He removed a small length of rope. It was old, frayed, knotted many times. He handed it to Ken. "Pull." Ken pulled one end. The knot tightened. Again, he pulled harder. The knot became even tighter. Soon, it could hardly move at all. Haru smiled gently. Now, he loosened his grip. The tension disappeared. The knot softened, slowly. It became easier to untangle. The old craftsman asked quietly, "What loosened the knot?" Ken looked carefully. "I stopped pulling." Haru nodded. "So often, we believe peace comes from trying harder, but some knots disappear only when we stop tightening them." Ken looked toward the river. He thought of arguments he had replayed, regrets he had analyzed, mistakes he had tried endlessly to fix inside his mind. Every replay had only tightened the knot. A breeze crossed the bridge. It carried dozens of golden autumn leaves. Some landed briefly upon the wooden planks. Others floated over the railing. Each leaf danced differently, yet every one eventually continued downstream. Haru watched them quietly. "Have you ever tried to hold a falling leaf?" Ken smiled. "As a child. And what happened? It always slipped away." The old craftsman nodded. "The tighter we closed our hands, the faster it escaped." Another silence settled between them, warm, comfortable. The kind of silence that gently rearranges the heart without asking permission. Haru invited Ken to sit upon the bridge. They watched the river below. After several minutes, the old craftsman spoke again. "There are 3 ways people meet the past." Ken listened. Some run from it. They become exhausted. He drew a small circle on the bridge with his finger. Some fight it. They become wounded. Then he looked toward the flowing river. And some bow to it. They become free. Ken frowned slightly. "What does it mean to bow to the past?" Haru smiled. "It means saying, 'You happened. You changed me. And now you may continue downstream.'" Ken felt those words settle deep inside him, not because they solved anything, but because they asked nothing from him except honesty. Just then, an elderly woman appeared at the far end of the bridge. She carried a woven basket filled with apples. She walked slowly, gracefully. When she reached the center, she smiled warmly at Haru. "You still bring travelers here." The old craftsman laughed. "The bridge is a better teacher than I am." She looked at Ken kindly. "When I was young, I crossed this bridge every day. I thought it connected 2 villages." She looked down at the river. "Now I know. It connects who I was with who I became." She continued her walk, never looking back. Her footsteps faded into the forest. Ken watched until she disappeared among the trees. The sun climbed higher. The mist had completely vanished. The valley glowed with quiet life. Haru stood. Before leaving, he placed one hand upon the weathered railing. This bridge has carried thousands of people. None were asked to stay. It was never meant to be a home. It was always meant to help people continue. He turned toward Ken. Memories are the same. They are bridges, not houses. Ken looked once more toward the road behind them, then toward the path ahead. For the first time in many years, he felt no desire to return and no fear of moving forward. Only curiosity, only quiet, only one gentle step waiting for the next. Together, they left the bridge behind, not because it no longer mattered, but because it had already given them everything it came to teach. The river continued flowing beneath the old wooden bridge. The leaves continued drifting toward distant waters. And somewhere, within Ken, a knot that had been pulled tight for many years began, almost without him noticing, to loosen. The old bridge slowly disappeared behind them. Its weathered timbers became hidden among the cedar trees. Only the quiet sound of the river remained. Haru and Ken continued walking along the winding path. The morning had grown warmer now. Golden sunlight rested gently upon the forest floor. Wildflowers swayed softly beside the trail. The breeze carried the scent of pine, moss, and fresh water. Neither hurried. Each step seemed to belong perfectly to the next. After some time, the trees began to thin. Ahead, a wide lake appeared. Its water stretched peacefully toward the distant mountains. Unlike the lively stream near the workshop, this lake barely moved at all. Its surface reflected the sky so perfectly that the clouds seemed to float beneath the water instead of above it. A small wooden dock reached quietly into the lake. At its end, an old boat rested against the weathered posts. It rocked gently with the smallest movement of the water. Haru stopped. This lake has been my teacher for many years. Ken looked around. It feels different. The old craftsman smiled. It speaks very softly. They walked to the end of the dock. The old boat creaked gently beneath the morning breeze. Its wood had faded from years beneath the sun, yet it remained strong, patient, faithful. Haru untied the rope. He stepped inside, then offered his hand. Ken climbed carefully into the boat. Without another word, Haru picked up a single wooden oar. He rowed slowly, not with strength, but with rhythm. Each stroke created small ripples that quietly disappeared behind them. Soon, they reached the center of the lake. There, Haru rested the oar across his knees. The boat drifted naturally. The silence around them felt almost endless. No voices, no footsteps. Only distant birds, and the occasional sound of water touching wood. After several peaceful minutes, Haru asked, "Have you ever been angry with someone?" Long after they had forgotten the moment, Ken laughed softly. "Many times." The old craftsman nodded. "So have I." He looked toward the far shore. "When I was younger, I believed other people created my suffering. If someone insulted me, they caused my pain. If someone disappointed me, they stole my peace." He smiled gently. "It took many years before I noticed something." Ken waited. The pain remained, even after they had gone. The lake shimmered quietly beneath the sun. If they had truly carried my suffering away, why was it still living inside me? Ken lowered his eyes. He understood the question immediately. There were people he had not seen for years, yet conversations with them still echoed inside his mind. Arguments continued. Apologies remained unfinished. Old disappointments felt strangely alive, although the people themselves had long continued with their own lives. Just then, a small fishing boat appeared in the distance. No one seemed to be inside. The current carried it slowly across the lake, without warning. The empty boat drifted gently toward them. Ken noticed it first. "It will hit us." Haru remained completely calm. The little boat floated closer, closer, then, softly, it bumped against their boat. A gentle knock, nothing more. The boats rocked once, then settled again. Ken instinctively looked around. "There isn't anyone inside." Haru smiled. "No, there isn't." The old craftsman waited a moment, then asked quietly, "Were you angry?" Ken blinked. "No." "Why not?" "Because." He looked again at the empty boat. "No one meant to hit us." Haru's smile grew warmer. "Exactly." The lake became silent again. Then Haru asked one more question. "If someone had been sitting inside, would you have felt differently?" Ken thought carefully. "I suppose. I would have assumed they weren't paying attention. Perhaps I would have been annoyed." Haru nodded. "The boats are identical. The impact is identical. The only difference is the story." "Is." The words lingered over the quiet water. "The mind is a wonderful storyteller," Haru continued. "It fills empty boats with intentions. He ignored me. She wanted to hurt me. They don't respect me. They should have known better." He dipped his fingertips gently into the lake. Small circles spread across the water. So often, our suffering grows not from what happened, but from the stories we quietly write afterward. Ken watched the ripples expand until they disappeared. He remembered countless moments. Someone who had not returned a letter, a friend who had walked away without explanation, a stranger whose harsh words had stayed with him for years. How many stories had he created? How many had been true? He honestly did not know. Haru slowly picked up the oar again, but instead of rowing, he laid it across the boat. The gentle breeze began moving them naturally. "Look around," Ken did. The lake reflected everything. The mountains, the sky, the drifting clouds. Even the two small boats. Nothing was distorted until the wind strengthened slightly. Tiny waves appeared. The reflections shimmered. The mountains looked broken. The clouds seemed twisted. The sky appeared uneven. Haru asked softly, "Did the mountains change?" "No." "Did the sky?" "No. Only the water." The old craftsman nodded. A disturbed mind reflects a disturbed world. A peaceful mind reflects the world more clearly. A white heron glided low across the lake. Its wings barely touched the air. For one beautiful moment, its reflection flew perfectly beneath it. Then it disappeared toward the reeds. Neither man spoke. There was nothing to add. The lake had already offered its lesson. After a long silence, Ken finally asked, "Then what should I do when someone truly hurts me?" Haru smiled. "A wound deserves care, but not every wound needs a lifelong story." He looked toward the empty fishing boat drifting peacefully away. Some people collide with us because they are lost. Some because they are frightened. Some because they are carrying storms we cannot see. He paused, and sometimes they simply drift. Like an empty boat, the sun climbed higher. Warm light spread across the quiet lake. Haru finally lifted the oar. With slow, steady strokes, they began rowing back toward shore. Each movement felt lighter than before. Ken watched the empty boat become smaller in the distance, until, eventually, it became impossible to tell whether it had ever been there at all. Yet, its lesson remained. Not heavy, not demanding, simply present. He realized something unexpected. Perhaps forgiveness was not pretending nothing had happened. Perhaps forgiveness was quietly releasing the stories that kept the collision alive, long after the boats had already drifted apart. The dock slowly came into view. The old rope swayed gently against the wooden posts. The breeze softened once again. The lake returned to perfect stillness. As Haru tied their boat to the dock, he smiled without looking up. "Today, you met an empty boat." Ken smiled back. "I think I also met my own mind." The old craftsman laughed softly. "That is often where the longest journey begins." They stepped onto the dock. Behind them, the lake rested peacefully beneath the wide blue sky. The empty boat continued drifting wherever the gentle wind wished to carry it. And somewhere, deep inside Ken, another invisible weight quietly slipped from his shoulders. The lake slowly disappeared behind them. Its quiet waters became hidden beyond the trees. The empty boat continued drifting somewhere beneath the morning sky. Neither Haru nor Ken looked back. Some lessons were meant to travel with the heart, not with the eyes. The forest welcomed them once again. Sunlight slipped gently through the cedar branches. The air had grown warmer. Tiny butterflies wandered lazily among clusters of wildflowers. Every sound seemed softer now. Every breath felt deeper. After walking for nearly an hour, the path narrowed. The cedar trees slowly gave way to something different. Tall, slender, emerald green bamboo rose toward the sky. Thousands of slender stalks stood together. Their leaves whispered high above. Each gentle breeze created a sound unlike anything Ken had ever heard. Not quite wind, not quite music. Something in between. The entire grove seemed to breathe. Haru smiled. "We have arrived." Ken looked around in quiet wonder. "It feels," he searched for the right word, "too alive." The old craftsman nodded. "It is." They stepped into the bamboo grove. Immediately, the air became cooler. Soft green light filtered through the towering stalks. The outside world seemed to disappear. No distant villages, no roads, only bamboo, only wind, only silence. They followed a winding path covered with fallen leaves. Not a single stalk stood perfectly straight. Some leaned slightly, others curved gracefully before rising again. Yet together, the grove felt perfectly balanced. Ken reached out and gently touched one smooth bamboo stalk. It swayed almost imperceptibly beneath his fingertips. "It bends." Haru smiled. "Yes, it has survived many storms." The old craftsman stopped beside one particularly tall stalk. He rested his hand upon it. "When I was young, I admired the great oak trees. They seemed so strong, so impossible to move." He looked upward. "But after many winters, I noticed something. The strongest oak often broke during violent storms." He gently pushed the bamboo. It bowed, then quietly returned upright. The bamboo survived. Ken watched carefully. Because it bends. Haru nodded. Exactly. A stronger breeze passed through the grove. Thousands of bamboo stalks swayed together. None resisted. None fought the wind. None demanded that the storm stop. They simply moved, gracefully, patiently. When the breeze passed, they became still once again. Haru looked toward Ken. Many people believe letting go means becoming weak. He shook his head gently. No, letting go is learning when not to resist. Ken lowered his eyes. The words felt strangely familiar. He thought about every painful memory he had struggled against, every disappointment he had tried to erase, every loss he had refused to accept. The harder he resisted, the more exhausted he became. Haru continued walking. Soon they reached a small clearing. At its center rested a weathered stone. Its surface was covered with soft green moss. The old craftsman sat. Ken joined him. Neither spoke for a while. The bamboo whispered overhead. Finally, Ken broke the silence. What if I cannot let go? Haru smiled kindly. You are asking the wrong question. Ken looked puzzled. The better question is, what are you still holding? The young traveler became quiet. The breeze continued moving gently through the leaves. After several moments, he answered honestly, I still carry disappointment. Haru nodded. What else? Guilt. Another pause. What else? The fear that I wasted years of my life. The old craftsman listened without interruption. And? Ken's voice grew quieter. I still wish the past had happened differently. The bamboo grove seemed even quieter now. At last, Haru asked softly, Can you change yesterday? Ken shook his head. No. Can yesterday change itself? No. The old craftsman smiled gently. Then why are both of you still arguing? The question settled into the silence, not demanding an answer, only inviting one. Ken closed his eyes. For years, his thoughts had argued endlessly with things that had already happened. He replayed conversations, imagined different endings, invented better answers, created happier futures for moments that were already gone. Every night, the argument continued, and every morning, nothing had changed, except his exhaustion. Haru picked up a single fallen bamboo leaf. He held it between two fingers. Watch. He released it. The breeze immediately carried it away. It floated gracefully through the grove, sometimes rising, sometimes falling, never struggling. Eventually, it disappeared among the green stalks. The old craftsman smiled. The leaf trusted the wind. Ken whispered, and if the wind carries it somewhere difficult? Haru looked upward. It still arrives. Another breeze moved through the grove. This time, the sound became deeper, like thousands of quiet voices breathing together. Haru closed his eyes. Listen, Ken did. At first, he heard only leaves. Then, he noticed something unexpected. No single bamboo stalk tried to create the sound. The music existed, because every stalk moved together, not one resisting, not one insisting upon remaining perfectly still. The grove became beautiful, because it allowed movement. The old craftsman opened his eyes. There is a quiet misunderstanding about peace. Ken listened. Many believe peace means that nothing unpleasant ever happens. He smiled. But peace is not the absence of wind. He gently touched another bamboo stalk. It is learning how to move with it. The afternoon light shifted. Golden beams filtered through the emerald leaves. Tiny particles of dust floated lazily through the air. Everything seemed suspended between movement and stillness. Haru slowly stood. He walked toward a young bamboo shoot emerging from the earth. It was no taller than Ken's knee. "So small," Ken said. "Yes," Haru replied. "But it already knows something many people spend their whole lives forgetting." "What?" The old craftsman smiled. "It grows upward, without carrying last year's leaves." They began walking once more. The winding path led deeper into the grove. The air became cooler, the whispers softer. Ken noticed that every step felt lighter than the one before. Not because his life had changed, not because his past had disappeared, but because, for the first time, he was beginning to stop pulling against it. He remembered the backpack full of stones, the old bridge, the empty boat, now the bamboo. Each lesson quietly echoed inside him. None demanded perfection. None promised that pain would vanish forever. They offered something gentler, the possibility that suffering became lighter when resistance became softer. As they reached the far edge of the bamboo grove, Haru paused one final time, without turning around. He spoke quietly. "Do not try to become a mountain every day." Ken looked at him. "Some days," the old craftsman continued, "it is wiser to become bamboo." A gentle breeze swept through the grove one last time. Thousands of green stalks bowed together, then, without effort, rose once again toward the sky. And somewhere inside Ken, the battle he had been fighting against yesterday began, very quietly, to lay down its sword. The bamboo grove slowly faded behind them. Its gentle whispers remained in the distance, like a song that continued long after it could no longer be heard. The afternoon sun had begun its quiet descent. Golden light stretched across the valley. Long shadows rested beneath the cedar trees. The air had become cooler. Neither Haru nor Ken hurried. Some conversations needed time before they were ready to begin. The narrow path wound gently upward. Eventually, the forest opened onto a small hill overlooking the entire valley. At its center stood an old stone circle. Within it, a fire pit rested quietly, cold, covered in pale grey ash. Several smooth stones surrounded it. Wild grass had begun growing between them. It looked as though no fire had burned there for many years. Haru stopped. "This place has waited for us." Ken looked at the circle. "It feels familiar." The old craftsman smiled. "Every heart has a place like this." They sat opposite one another. Neither reached for firewood, neither tried to light a flame. The ashes remained untouched. A gentle breeze crossed the hill. Tiny strands of ash lifted briefly into the air, then settled once again. Haru looked quietly into the empty fire pit. "Tell me something." Ken remained still. "What is the oldest pain you still carry?" The question arrived gently, without judgment, without urgency, without demanding an answer. For a long while, only silence spoke. The valley breathed below them. Birds circled lazily above distant cliffs. Somewhere beyond the trees, the stream continued its endless journey. At last, Ken lowered his eyes. There was someone. Haru simply listened. No interruption, no advice, only presence. Ken continued. "His name was Daichi, my closest friend. We grew up together. We dreamed together. We planned our futures together. A faint smile appeared, then slowly disappeared. We promised, no matter where life carried us, we would never become strangers. The breeze became quieter, almost as though the world itself wished to hear the rest. Ken drew a small line through the ash with his fingertip. One autumn, we argued. He swallowed gently. It began with something so small, a misunderstanding, a careless sentence. Pride. Neither of us wanted to speak first. So, we didn't. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The silence grew heavier, harder, sharper. I kept waiting for him to apologize. I believed he was waiting for me. Haru nodded almost imperceptibly. Ken continued. Before either of us found the courage, he became ill. His voice grew quieter. Very quickly, there was no warning. There was no second chance. I reached his home, one day too late. Silence returned, long, deep. The breeze no longer moved. Even the birds seemed distant now. Only the quiet valley remained. Ken whispered, "I never said I was sorry. I never thanked him. I never told him that losing our friendship had hurt me more than my pride." His eyes remained fixed upon the ashes. I have carried that day, every single day since. Haru said nothing, not because he lacked words, but because grief rarely needs answers. It needs company. The old craftsman reached slowly toward the fire pit. He picked up a handful of cool ash. He opened his fingers. The breeze carried the ash gently away. Some disappeared immediately. Some drifted only a short distance. None returned. After watching them vanish, Haru finally spoke. "When was the fire?" Ken answered softly. "Many years ago." The old craftsman nodded. "And what remains?" Ken looked down. "Ashes." Haru smiled, gently. "Yes. The fire has ended. The warmth has ended. The smoke has ended. Only the ashes remain." Another quiet pause. Then, the old craftsman looked into Ken's eyes. "So tell me, why are you still trying to burn yourself with a fire that has already become ash?" The words settled deeply. Ken felt something inside him stop, not disappear, simply stop. For years, he had returned to that single memory, again and again and again. Each visit had reignited flames that no longer existed, only because he imagined they still burned. Haru gently brushed the remaining ash into a small pile. When wood burns, it becomes something new. When grief is welcomed, it also changes. He held up a small pinch of ash. This ash cannot become wood again, but it can nourish the earth. It can feed tomorrow's flowers. It can become part of something living. He released it. The breeze carried it into the surrounding grass. Ken remained silent. Tears quietly gathered in his eyes. Not the desperate tears of fresh sorrow, something softer, something older. Like rain finally reaching a dry field. "I don't know how to forgive myself," he whispered. Haru nodded. "I know." The old craftsman rested both hands upon his knees. "Many people think forgiveness is a reward. It is not. It is a release. It is the moment you stop asking yesterday to become different." The afternoon light turned warmer. Everything glowed in shades of gold. The valley looked peaceful beyond words. Haru reached into the pocket of his robe. He removed 2 small cedar seeds. He placed one in Ken's hand, one in his own. This seed, he said, will become a tree, but only if it is placed into the earth. He closed Ken's fingers gently around the seed. It cannot grow. While clutched inside a closed fist, Ken looked quietly at the tiny seed. So forgiveness. Haru smiled, is opening the hand. Neither man spoke for a very long time. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt kind. The kind of silence that asks nothing except honesty. Ken slowly opened his hand. He looked at the seed resting in his palm. Then, without ceremony, he knelt beside the old fire pit, using only his fingers. He made a small place in the earth. He laid the cedar seed inside, then gently covered it. No prayer, no promise, only one quiet act, one simple beginning. Haru watched with peaceful eyes. You are not burying your friend, he said softly. You are planting what his memory may still become. Ken closed his eyes. For the first time in many years, he no longer pictured the final argument. Instead, he remembered two boys laughing beside a river, running through summer fields, sharing dreams beneath the stars. The memory no longer burned. It glowed, warmly, quietly, like the last ember after a long fire. The sun slipped lower toward the mountains. The shadows grew long. The breeze carried the scent of cedar across the hill. Haru slowly stood. It is time. Ken rose beside him. Before leaving, he looked once more at the small place where the seed now rested beneath the earth. Nothing had changed. Nothing could yet be seen. And yet, everything felt different. Some healing, the old craftsman said as they began walking, always begins beneath the surface. Together, they left the old fire pit behind. The ashes remained. The seed remained. The evening light settled gently over the quiet hill, and somewhere deep within Ken, a fire that had burned for far too many years, finally accepted that it had already become ash. Evening settled gently across the valley. The brilliant gold of afternoon slowly softened into warm amber. The mountains stood quietly beneath the fading light. Birdsong became less frequent. The breeze moved more slowly now. It seemed as though the entire world was preparing for rest. Haru and Ken walked without speaking. The silence between them no longer felt uncertain. It felt familiar, comfortable, like two old friends sharing the same peaceful road. The narrow path climbed gradually toward the highest point, overlooking the valley. As they reached the summit, Ken noticed something unexpected. There was no temple, no shrine, no monument, only an old wooden gate, simple, weathered, standing alone beneath an ancient cherry tree. There were no walls attached to it, no fence, no building beyond it, only the open sky, only rolling fields stretching toward the distant mountains. Ken looked at the strange gate. It doesn't lead anywhere. Haru smiled gently. Walk through it. Ken hesitated. It is only a gate. Yes. So why? The old craftsman looked toward the endless horizon. Because not every doorway leads to another place. Some lead to another way of seeing. Ken stepped slowly toward the gate. Its wood had been polished smooth by countless seasons of rain and sunlight. Tiny patches of moss rested near its base. The cherry tree above it had long since finished blooming. Only a few faded leaves remained. He placed one hand upon the old timber, It felt warm from the day's sunlight. Then, without ceremony, he walked through. Nothing happened. The sky remained the same. The mountains remained unchanged. The breeze continued exactly as before. Ken smiled quietly. I feel no different. Haru nodded. Good. Ken looked puzzled. I expected something. So do most people. The old craftsman walked through the gate as well, then stood beside him. They believe peace should feel dramatic. They wait for lightning, for certainty, for a moment that changes everything. He looked toward the valley below. But most healing arrives so quietly that we only notice it when we look back. The evening breeze carried the scent of wild grass far below. Small lights began appearing in the distant village. Families were preparing their evening meals. Children laughed somewhere beyond the fields. The world continued exactly as it always had. Ken leaned gently against one of the gateposts. I still miss him. Haru nodded. I know. I think I always will. I know. Ken looked toward the mountains. I thought letting go meant forgetting. The old craftsman remained silent for a moment. Then he smiled with quiet kindness. No, forgetfulness is not peace. Love was never meant to disappear. He rested his hand upon the weathered wood. When someone has truly touched your life, they continue walking with you, just differently. Ken listened carefully. You do not honor them by carrying endless sorrow. You honor them by carrying forward the kindness they awakened within you. The words drifted gently through the cool evening air. Ken closed his eyes. For many years, he had feared that healing would somehow betray his friend, as though smiling again would mean loving him less, as though peace required forgetting. Now, for the very first time, he realized something different. Perhaps grief had never asked him to remain broken. Perhaps love had always hoped he would become whole again. A single tear rolled quietly down his cheek, not from despair, but from relief. Haru looked toward the cherry tree. Its branches swayed gently against the evening sky. Do you see this tree? Ken nodded. It blooms every spring. It loses every blossom. It stands bare through winter. It blooms again. He smiled softly. Does the tree love last spring's flowers any less? Because it blossoms again? Ken looked upward. No, the blossoms fall, but the tree remembers. The old craftsman nodded. So does the heart. For several peaceful minutes, neither spoke. The valley slowly grew darker. The first evening star appeared, then another, then dozens more. Tiny lights quietly awakening across the heavens. Haru finally broke the silence. When I lost my own teacher, I believed my path had ended. Ken turned toward him. The old craftsman rarely spoke about himself. For many months, I waited for another teacher. I searched many villages. I climbed many mountains. I found no one. What happened? Ken asked softly. Haru smiled. One morning, I was making tea. The steam rose exactly as it always had. The birds sang exactly as they always had. The wind moved through the pines. And suddenly, I heard my teacher laughing. Ken looked around instinctively. There was no one there. I know. Haru chuckled. But I finally understood. My teacher had not remained beside me. He had become part of the way I saw the world. The evening deepened. Moonlight began touching the fields. The wooden gate cast a long shadow across the grass. Haru stepped slowly to one side. "Walk through it once more," Ken did. Again, nothing dramatic happened. No flash of understanding. No great revelation. Only another gentle step, then another. The old craftsman smiled. "Did you notice?" Ken thought carefully. "I wasn't expecting anything this time." Haru nodded. "And because you stopped searching, you were finally present." The breeze became cooler. Somewhere nearby, a single night bird called softly through the valley. The stars multiplied overhead. The world seemed vast, endless, peaceful. Ken stood quietly beneath the open gate. He thought about the backpack full of stones, the old bridge, the empty boat, the bamboo grove, the ashes, the tiny cedar seed. Each lesson had removed something invisible, not all at once, not dramatically. Only one gentle burden at a time. He placed both hands over his heart, not to protect it, not to hide it, simply to feel its quiet rhythm. It was steady, calm, patient, like the mountains surrounding the valley. Haru looked toward the sky. "The heart is much like this gate." Ken listened. It was never meant to remain closed forever. It was never meant to hold everyone captive inside. It was made so that love may enter, and when the time comes, so that love may continue its journey. Ken breathed in slowly. The cool evening air filled his lungs. He breathed out gently. For the first time in many years, the exhale felt complete. Together, they stood beneath the open gate until darkness quietly embraced the valley. No more lessons were needed, no more answers. Only the gentle rhythm of breathing, only the quiet company of two travelers, only the peaceful certainty that nothing truly loved is ever lost. It simply changes the way it remains with us. The stars continued appearing one by one. The mountains settled beneath the night. The cherry tree whispered softly in the breeze. And somewhere deep within Ken, the door he had kept locked for so many years did not swing open all at once. It simply, very quietly, began to stay open a little longer. With every peaceful breath, the night had fully arrived. Not suddenly, but quietly, patiently, as though the sky itself had taken a slow, peaceful breath above the valley. Thousands of stars rested upon a sea of deep blue. The mountains stood beneath them, silent, steady, timeless. The old wooden gate remained behind. The cherry tree whispered softly in the evening breeze. Neither Haru nor Ken hurried to leave. There was nowhere else they needed to be. Nothing more they needed to find. The journey had become something different now. No longer a search, only a quiet walk beneath the stars. They followed a narrow path down the hillside. Moonlight rested gently upon the grass. Every blade shimmered with silver dew. The world seemed wrapped in softness. Even the sound of their footsteps had become quiet. The earth accepted each step without complaint, without judgment, without expectation. Haru finally spoke. "The valley teaches one final lesson every evening." Ken smiled gently. "What lesson is that?" The old craftsman looked toward the open sky. "It asks for nothing." They continued walking. The words lingered peacefully in the air. "It asks for nothing." Ken repeated quietly. He looked around. The mountains asked for nothing. The stars asked for nothing. The wind moved exactly as it wished. The trees stood exactly as they were. No flower tried to bloom faster. No river hurried toward the sea. Everything simply existed, complete, enough. After some time, they arrived at a quiet meadow. Wild grass moved gently beneath the moonlight. Tiny white flowers opened beneath the cool night air. At the center of the meadow rested a single flat stone, large enough for 2 people to sit comfortably. Haru lowered himself slowly onto the stone. Ken joined him. Neither spoke. The silence no longer felt empty. It felt welcoming, like an old friend who no longer needed introductions. Far away, an owl called once through the forest. Its voice echoed gently across the valley. Then silence returned, long, soft, peaceful. The breeze brushed lightly across Ken's face. He noticed something unexpected. His breathing had changed, without trying, without remembering, without effort. It had become slower, gentler, almost as though the valley itself had begun breathing with him. He inhaled cool mountain air, fresh cedar, the faint sweetness of wildflowers. He exhaled. Everything felt lighter. Haru looked toward the stars. When people become tired, they often believe they need more strength. He smiled softly. But sometimes, what they truly need, is permission to rest. Ken closed his eyes for a moment. How many years? Had he believed resting must be earned? How many evenings? Had he carried tomorrow before today had even ended? How many nights had sleep waited patiently, while his thoughts continued working long after his body had grown weary? The questions drifted gently away, like mist crossing the valley. No answers were necessary. The moon climbed higher. Its silver light rested upon the nearby grass. Tiny insects sang quietly among the flowers. Nothing interrupted the peace. Nothing demanded attention. Haru reached beside him. He picked up a smooth stone warmed by the day's sunlight. Now it had become cool. He placed it gently into Ken's hand. Feel it. Ken turned the stone slowly. Its surface was smooth, comforting, silent. It does not hold yesterday's warmth, Haru said. It accepted the coolness of the night. He smiled. And tomorrow, it will welcome the sun again. Ken held the stone a little longer, then quietly placed it back upon the earth, exactly where it had rested before. The stars seemed brighter now. Or perhaps Ken simply noticed them more. Some were brilliant, others barely visible. None competed, none hurried to shine. Each rested peacefully within the endless sky. Haru whispered, "The stars never wonder whether they are enough." Another gentle silence. "Only people do." Ken smiled. A small smile, barely noticeable. Yet somehow, it felt lighter than laughter. The breeze became softer. The meadow settled even deeper into stillness. The grass moved like quiet waves beneath the moonlight. Ken noticed his shoulders, relaxed, his hands resting naturally, his jaw soft, his forehead smooth. Even the tiny muscles around his eyes had become wonderfully still. His body no longer felt like something he needed to carry. It simply rested, supported by the earth beneath him, held gently by the quiet night. Haru's voice became even softer. "So much of life we spend asking." He paused, asking for certainty, asking for answers, asking for tomorrow, asking for yesterday to become different. The old craftsman looked toward the distant mountains. But tonight, the valley asks for nothing. It simply welcomes. The words drifted into the silence. like feathers carried by the wind. Ken slowly opened his eyes. The world looked exactly the same. The mountains had not moved. The stars had not changed. The breeze continued quietly through the meadow. Nothing outside had become different. Yet something inside him had grown remarkably still. Not empty, simply peaceful, like a lake after the last ripple disappears. Neither man spoke again for a long while. The night had become the teacher now. The stars, the storytellers, the breeze, the gentle narrator. There were no more lessons to understand, only quiet moments to experience, only slow breaths to notice, only peaceful stillness to receive. Ken breathed in. Slowly, comfortably, he breathed out, even more gently. Again, in, softly, out, slowly. The rhythm continued by itself. There was nothing left to improve, nothing left to solve, nothing left to hold. Only breathing, only resting, only allowing the night to become part of him. Far below, the valley slept peacefully. The little village rested beneath the stars. The stream continued singing its endless lullaby. The cedar forest breathed quietly beneath the moon. Everything belonged exactly where it was, including him, for perhaps the first time in many years. Ken no longer felt like someone searching for peace. He felt like someone quietly remembering that peace had never truly left. It had simply waited, patiently, beneath every breath, beneath every silence, beneath every moment. When he finally stopped trying to hold the whole world in his hands, the meadow remained still. The stars continued shining. The mountains watched over the sleeping valley, and the night asked for nothing at all. The night had grown even quieter. The meadow rested peacefully beneath the moon. The grasses moved only when the gentlest breeze invited them to dance. The mountains remained exactly as they had always been, patient, steady, watching over the valley without asking anything in return. Haru and Ken remained seated upon the smooth stone. Neither wished to hurry the night. There was no destination left, only this peaceful moment, only this quiet breath, only this endless sky. Above them, the stars stretched farther than the eye could follow, thousands upon thousands of gentle lights, some bright, some faint, some appearing, only after the eyes had rested in the darkness for a while. Between them, soft clouds drifted slowly across the moon, never rushing, never lingering, simply moving. Haru looked upward. The sky has another lesson. Ken followed his gaze. What is it? The old craftsman smiled gently. The sky never tries to keep the clouds. A long silence followed. The moon slipped quietly behind a thin veil of silver cloud. Its light became softer. The meadow seemed even more peaceful. Ken watched as one cloud slowly crossed the stars. For a few moments, some stars disappeared from view. Then, as the cloud continued its journey, they quietly returned. The stars had never left. Only the cloud had passed before them. Haru spoke almost in a whisper. The mind is often like this sky. He paused, and thoughts, are like passing clouds. Ken continued watching. Another cloud drifted gently overhead. Different shape, different speed, different direction. Yet it too continued onward, without effort, without permission, without resistance. When people cannot sleep, Haru continued softly, They often believe they must chase every cloud away. He smiled. But the sky has never done that. The breeze touched the meadow once more. The grasses bowed together, then slowly stood again. The sky simply allows each cloud to arrive and to leave. Ken closed his eyes. Immediately, thoughts appeared. A memory, then another. The face of his childhood friend, the old bridge, the empty boat, the bamboo grove, the cedar seed resting beneath the earth. For a brief moment, he almost followed them. Almost. Then he remembered the sky. The thoughts were only clouds. They did not need to disappear. They only needed space to continue moving, without being held, without being chased, without becoming storms. His breathing became slower. In, softly, out, gently, again. A calm breath in, a peaceful breath out. Each exhale felt like opening another window inside his heart, allowing fresh night air to enter, allowing old worries to drift away, naturally. The moon emerged once again. Its silver light washed across the valley. Every blade of grass shimmered quietly. Tiny drops of dew reflected the stars like countless little mirrors. The whole meadow seemed wrapped in kindness. Nothing sharp, nothing hurried, only softness. Haru lowered his eyes toward the earth. "Have you noticed?" he asked quietly. "The clouds never apologize for leaving." Ken smiled faintly. "They simply continue." "Yes, and the sky never asks them to stay." Another silence settled gently around them, warm, comfortable, safe, far below. The stream continued its endless song. It sounded even farther away now, almost like a lullaby carried by the wind. Somewhere in the forest, a night bird called once, then became silent again. Everything seemed perfectly complete, exactly as it was. Ken noticed how heavy his body had become. Not uncomfortable, wonderfully heavy. His legs rested completely. His shoulders no longer carried invisible weight. His hands lay softly upon his knees. His breathing required no attention. It continued by itself. Slow, even, peaceful, almost like the rhythm of the distant river. The stars continued shining above. They did not become brighter because someone watched them. They did not fade because someone looked away. They simply existed, quietly, faithfully, patiently. Haru smiled. There is great freedom in no longer asking the world to be different. Ken allowed those words to settle gently inside him. He did not analyze them. He did not search for hidden meaning. He simply let them rest, like moonlight resting upon still water. Another cloud crossed the sky, larger this time. The moon disappeared completely. For a few peaceful moments, the meadow became darker. Nothing felt frightening. Nothing felt uncertain, only quieter. Then, just as naturally, the cloud moved on. Moonlight returned, without struggle, without effort, without anyone asking it to. Haru whispered, "Every feeling, is a cloud. Every worry is a cloud. Every fear is a cloud. Every memory is a cloud." He paused. "But you," he looked gently toward Ken. "Of the sky." The words dissolved into silence. No explanation followed. None was needed. Ken breathed slowly. He imagined the wide night sky above him, boundless, open, infinite. Thoughts drifted through it, some light, some heavy, some bright, some dark, each one moving, each one passing, none remaining forever. The sky never became the cloud, it simply held space. His heartbeat had become wonderfully calm, slow, steady, gentle. Like quiet footsteps across soft earth, his eyelids felt pleasantly heavy. The cool night air rested lightly upon his face. The scent of cedar drifted through the meadow. Everything invited rest. Nothing demanded wakefulness. Haru no longer spoke. There was nothing left to guide. The night itself had become the guide. The stars became quiet companions. The breeze became gentle music. The moon became a lantern above the sleeping world. Ken allowed himself to simply be. No effort, no striving, no searching, only breathing, only resting, only floating gently within the endless sky of awareness. Another peaceful breath. In, out, again, in, out, longer, softer, slower. Each breath carrying him farther into stillness, farther into quiet, farther towards sleep. The clouds continued their silent journey. The sky remained open. The valley rested beneath the stars. And somewhere beyond words, beyond thoughts, beyond memories, Ken discovered that the secret of letting go had never been forcing anything to disappear. It had always been allowing everything to gently pass through without asking it to stay. The night had become wonderfully still. The meadow rested beneath an endless blanket of stars. The breeze had grown softer now, so soft that it barely stirred the tops of the grasses. Everything seemed to have found its perfect place. The mountains rested, the forest rested, the valley rested. Even the river, though it never stopped flowing, seemed to move with quieter grace. Haru remained seated beside Ken. Neither spoke. The silence itself had become a gentle companion, no longer empty, no longer unfamiliar, simply peaceful. The moon hung high above the valley, round, calm, unhurried. Its silver light spread across the hills like flowing silk. Every stone, every flower, every tree, every quiet path received exactly the same gentle light, without preference, without hurry, without effort. Ken lifted his eyes. "It feels," he whispered, "as though the whole world has slowed." Haru smiled. "The world has always moved this slowly." He paused. "It is only our minds that sometimes race ahead." A long, comfortable silence followed. The moon continued its silent journey across the heavens. No one watched it closely. No one asked it to move faster, yet it never failed to reach the western horizon. Night after night, year after year, season after season, patiently, faithfully, quietly, Haru finally spoke again. "The moon has never hurried the dawn." Ken watched the pale light resting upon the distant hills. "No, it simply shines until morning is ready." The words floated gently into the quiet air. Ken allowed them to settle naturally. How often had he hurried tomorrow? How often had he wished healing would arrive more quickly? How often had he expected peace to appear all at once? Perhaps healing also had its own seasons, its own rhythm, its own quiet timing. Just like the moon, a cool breeze wandered across the meadow. The scent of cedar drifted through the night. Wildflowers nodded gently. Somewhere beyond the hillside, a tiny stream continued, whispering over smooth stones. Its song had become almost impossible to hear, yet somehow, knowing it was there brought comfort. Not every peaceful thing needed to be seen. Not every comforting thing needed to be loud. Ken noticed another slow breath. In, cool, fresh, gentle, out, warm, soft, relaxed. Again, in, out. His breathing seemed to belong to the valley now. The valley breathed. He breathed. The difference between them became difficult to notice. Haru rested both hands upon his knees. His eyes remained upon the moon. When winter arrives, he said quietly, "Does the mountain become impatient for spring?" Ken smiled. "No. When spring arrives. Does it cling to the blossoms forever? No. When autumn comes. Do the leaves refuse to fall?" Ken looked toward the nearby trees. A single golden leaf drifted slowly to the earth. No, the old craftsman nodded. Everything knows when to arrive and when to let go. The leaf landed softly upon the grass. No sound, no struggle, only a gentle arrival. The earth welcomed it without hesitation. Tomorrow, or perhaps many tomorrows from now, it would become part of the soil. One day, it would nourish new life. Nothing was wasted. Nothing truly disappeared. Everything changed gently into something new. Ken felt the heaviness behind his eyes, a pleasant heaviness, the kind that arrives before peaceful sleep. His body felt comfortably warm. His hands rested effortlessly. His shoulders had completely forgotten how to be tense. Even the thoughts that still appeared arrived more quietly now. One memory, then silence. One small thought, then stillness. They no longer lingered. They drifted by, like clouds crossing the moon. Above them, the stars remained patient. None hurried toward morning. None worried about tomorrow's sunrise. They simply shone, exactly where they were, exactly as they were. The moon did the same. The valley did the same. Perhaps, Ken thought, he could do the same as well. Haru's voice became softer than ever before. So much suffering, he whispered, comes from asking life to move at the speed of fear. He smiled gently. But wisdom moves at the speed of breathing. Another long silence. Slow in, slow out. Nothing more needed to be said. The breeze passed once again. It touched the grasses, the flowers, the cedar branches, then quietly continued across the valley, never trying to remain, never saying goodbye, simply moving onward, exactly as the wind has always done. Ken listened to his own heartbeat, steady, even, calm, like footsteps upon a quiet path. Nothing rushed, nothing chased, nothing resisted. Everything simply unfolded. One heartbeat, then another. One breath, then another. One peaceful moment, following the next. The moon slowly began its gentle descent toward the western mountains, so slowly that it almost seemed still. Yet every passing moment carried it a little farther, without effort, without anxiety, without ever wondering whether it would arrive. It simply trusted the night. Haru closed his eyes. "The moon teaches something beautiful," he whispered. "It never asks, 'Am I late?' It never worries, 'Will dawn come?' It simply continues. The dawn always finds it. Ken felt those words settle deep within him. How many nights had he feared tomorrow before it even arrived? How many hours had he tried to solve problems that belonged to another sunrise? Tonight, for the first time, he allowed tomorrow to remain tomorrow. There was nothing to prepare, nothing to rehearse, nothing to carry. Morning would find him just as surely as it always had. The meadow became even quieter. The insects sang more softly. The breeze slowed again. The stars watched peacefully from above. Ken no longer felt like he was listening to a story. The words had become part of the silence. The silence had become part of the night. The night had become part of his breathing. One slow breath. In, out. Another. In, out. Longer, gentler, softer. The spaces between each breath widened. Comfortably, naturally, peacefully. There was no effort left. Only rest. Only stillness. Only the quiet certainty that nothing beautiful ever needed to hurry. Not the moon, not the dawn, not healing, not sleep, and certainly not this peaceful moment. The night had become deeper now. The moon continued its quiet journey across the heavens. The stars rested peacefully above the sleeping valley. The meadow around Haru and Ken had grown perfectly still. Only the faint whisper of the breeze remained. Only the soft rhythm of breathing. Only the gentle kindness of another peaceful moment. Neither traveler spoke. There was no longer any need. The lessons had already found their home. Now, the night itself continued the story. After a long while, Haru slowly stood, not because there was somewhere to go, only because his feet wished to walk a little farther beneath the moonlight. Ken rose beside him. Together, they followed a narrow trail leading back toward the forest. The path glowed softly beneath the silver light. Every stone, every fern, every wildflower appeared wrapped in quiet. The forest welcomed them without a sound. Ancient cedar trees stood like silent guardians. Their branches reached gently toward the stars. Their roots rested deep within the earth, unmoving, certain, patient. As they stepped beneath the tall trees, the air became cooler. The moonlight filtered through the branches in soft ribbons of silver. Tiny patches of light rested upon the forest floor. Everything else remained comfortably dark, not frightening, only peaceful. Like closing one's eyes after a long day. The scent of cedar surrounded them, fresh, clean, timeless. Ken breathed deeply. It felt as though every breath washed gently through his thoughts, carrying away the last traces of hurry, the last echoes of tension, leaving only quiet. Haru looked upward. The forest remembers something. Ken waited. It remembers how to rest. The old craftsman gently placed his hand against the rough bark of a cedar tree. For hundreds of years, it has stood here. It has welcomed rain. It has welcomed snow. It has welcomed sunlight. It has welcomed darkness. It never argued with the seasons. It simply rested inside each one. The words faded into silence. Somewhere high above, a gentle wind moved through the treetops. The branches answered with a quiet whisper, not loud, not hurried, almost like distant breathing. Ken closed his eyes. The sound surrounded him, layer upon layer, leaves, branches, soft wind, the faint call of a night bird far away. Everything blended together. There was no single sound, only one gentle harmony. They continued walking, very slowly. Almost without noticing each step, the forest floor felt soft beneath their feet, covered with fallen needles, old leaves, rich earth, nothing sharp, nothing demanding, only gentle support. The earth carried every step without effort, just as it had carried countless travelers before them, just as it would carry countless travelers after them. Haru smiled quietly. Notice something. Ken listened. The trees never compete. He looked around. The tallest cedar reached high toward the stars. Nearby, a younger tree stood only half its height. A tiny fern rested beneath them both. Each one received the same moonlight. Each one belonged, exactly where it stood. There is room, Haru whispered, for every tree, for every flower, for every quiet beginning. A peaceful silence followed, long, comfortable, the kind of silence that no longer asks to be filled. Ken noticed his heartbeat, slow, steady, gentle. It seemed almost synchronized with his breathing now. In, out, in, out. The rhythm continued naturally, without effort, without thought. The forest became even quieter. Somewhere nearby, a single leaf loosened from its branch. It floated gently through the cool night air, turning once, twice, then softly touched the earth. No sound, no farewell, only arrival. Haru watched it with kind eyes. The leaf does not fear the ground, he whispered. It trusts the earth. Ken looked toward the place where the leaf had landed. Soon, it became impossible to distinguish it from all the others resting peacefully below. Nothing had been lost, only changed. One day, rain would soften it. Time would welcome it. The earth would receive it. Eventually, it would nourish another tree, another leaf, another quiet season. Everything continued. Nothing was wasted. The moonlight shifted gently through the branches. Tiny shadows moved across the path, like slow waves upon still water. Ken no longer felt the need to understand every thought. When one appeared, he smiled softly, then allowed it to continue on. When silence returned, he welcomed that too. Nothing needed to remain. Nothing needed to disappear. Everything belonged, for exactly as long as it wished. Haru's voice became softer. So often, we believe resting means stopping. He smiled. But the forest teaches something gentler. The trees continue growing. The roots continue drinking. The earth continues breathing, even while everything appears still. Another quiet pause. So may you. Ken breathed in the cool scent of cedar, the freshness of moss, the quiet sweetness of the night. He breathed out, long, slow, easy. His shoulders softened even more. His hands felt warm, his eyelids wonderfully heavy. His thoughts had become like distant birds, present, yet impossibly far away. They reached a small clearing deep within the forest. Moonlight rested upon a circle of soft moss. Haru quietly sat. Ken did the same. The moss felt cool, comfortable, welcoming. Above them, the branches framed a perfect window of stars. No clouds crossed the sky now, only endless darkness, filled with quiet light. Neither spoke again. The forest no longer needed words. Its silence had become complete. Its stillness had become a gentle blanket. Its peaceful rhythm seemed to flow through every tree, every stone, every breath. Ken noticed something unexpected. He could no longer tell where the sounds of the forest ended and where his own breathing began. Everything had become one quiet rhythm, one gentle heartbeat, one peaceful night. The stars continued shining. The cedar trees continued resting. The earth continued holding everything with quiet strength. The breeze wandered softly among the branches, never rushing, never lingering, simply moving, simply being, just as sleep arrives, without force, without command. Only when everything becomes ready, another slow breath, in, out, again, in, out, longer now, softer now. The pauses between each breath stretched comfortably into silence. The silence became deeper, warmer, kinder. The forest remembered how to rest, and little by little, without trying, without effort, Ken remembered too. The forest remained wrapped in silence. The cedar trees rested beneath the stars. The moss beneath Haru and Ken felt cool, soft, steady. The air had become even calmer. The breeze now arrived only from time to time, like a quiet visitor, never staying long, never leaving too quickly. The night had settled into its deepest rhythm. After many peaceful moments, Haru slowly opened his eyes. He smiled gently. There is one place I always visit before sleep. Ken rose quietly beside him. Neither spoke again. Words had become unnecessary. The forest already understood them. The stars already understood them. Perhaps their own hearts did as well. The narrow path descended through the ancient cedars. Moonlight rested upon smooth stones. Tiny ferns shimmered with silver dew. The earth felt wonderfully familiar beneath every step. No hurry, no destination, only walking, only breathing, only listening. Soon, the quiet sound of water returned. At first, only a whisper, barely noticeable. Then, a little clearer, gentle water moving across smooth stones. Soft, patient, endless. The same stream they had crossed days before. The same stream that never stopped. The same stream that never rushed. When they reached its banks, the moon reflected upon the water. Long ribbons of silver drifted gently with the current. Small ripples carried the reflection downstream, breaking it, joining it again, breaking it once more. The moon itself remained untouched. Only its reflection moved. Ken watched quietly. The river continued singing, the same peaceful song, without beginning, without ending. Haru sat upon a smooth stone beside the water. Ken joined him. Neither disturbed the stream. They simply watched. They simply listened. The current flowed around every stone, never arguing, never complaining. If a rock stood in its way, the water quietly curved around it. If the path narrowed, the water became deeper. If the river widened, it slowed. Nothing resisted. Everything adapted. Haru spoke so softly. His words almost became part of the water. The river never carries, only joy. He paused. It carries fallen leaves. It carries broken branches. It carries flower petals. It carries rain. It carries shadows. It carries moonlight. It refuses none of them. Another gentle silence. And yet, it remains a river. Ken watched a single leaf floating upon the current. It turned slowly, drifted around a stone, then continued downstream. The river did not ask the leaf where it had come from. It did not ask where it was going. It simply carried it. With quiet kindness, another breath, in, out, the sound of the water blended with his breathing. It became difficult to tell which one began first. The stream flowed. His breath flowed. The night flowed. Everything moved together. Without effort, tiny circles appeared upon the surface of the river. A fish had risen gently beneath the moonlight. The ripples widened, growing larger, then softer, then invisible. The water became still again. Nothing remained, except the quiet current. Haru smiled. Thoughts are often like these ripples. They appear, they widen, and if we leave them alone, they become still. Ken continued watching the water. He did not wait for another ripple. He did not wish the last one to remain. He simply watched, patiently. The river continued its endless journey. It did not know the ocean was waiting. It did not worry about the distance. It simply flowed through this moment, this bend, this quiet night, one gentle movement at a time. The breeze returned. It touched the water. Tiny silver lines shimmered across the surface. Then, the breeze continued onward. The river accepted both stillness and movement. Without preference, Ken noticed how wonderfully heavy his eyelids had become. His body rested naturally. His hands lay quietly upon his lap. His shoulders were completely free. His forehead smooth. His breathing deep, slow, even, comfortable. Every exhale felt longer than the one before. Every inhale arrived gently on its own. Nothing needed attention. Nothing required effort. Far above, the stars reflected faintly upon the water. Some reflections trembled with the current. Others disappeared beneath the shadows. Yet the stars themselves remained steady in the sky. The river never tried to hold them. It simply welcomed their light for a while, then carried it onward. Haru's voice became almost a whisper carried by the stream. There is great peace, in allowing life to pass through you, as gently as this river. No explanation followed. Only water. Only night. Only breathing. The current continued, steady, patient, faithful, just as it had yesterday, just as it would tomorrow. The river never hurried toward the sea. It trusted every turn, every stone, every quiet curve along its journey. Ken closed his eyes. He no longer needed to see the river. He could hear it. He could feel its rhythm. The flowing water became like a lullaby, gentle, reassuring, endless. Each breath floated upon its current. Each heartbeat drifted peacefully beside it. His thoughts had become very distant now, like leaves already far downstream, too far away to follow, too gentle to disturb the silence. The moon climbed quietly above the trees. Its reflection stretched across the water, then slowly drifted onward with the current. Nothing stayed. Nothing was lost. Everything continued. Everything belonged. Everything rested exactly where it needed to be. Another slow breath. In, out, again. In, out, longer, softer, quieter. The spaces between each breath became wide, comfortable, peaceful, like the quiet pools between gentle bends of the river. The stream carried fallen leaves. It carried moonlight. It carried silence. It carried the dreams of the sleeping valley. And without asking anything in return, it carried every lingering thought, every gentle memory, every remaining worry. Farther and farther into the peaceful darkness of the night, the river continued its endless journey. Its quiet song slowly faded behind the cedar trees, not because it had become silent, but because the night had grown deeper still. Everything now seemed wrapped in a gentle hush. The breeze had almost completely rested. Even the leaves no longer whispered. The valley slept peacefully beneath the stars, and, above it all, the mountains remained, ancient, patient, unmoving. Haru and Ken left the riverbank without a word. The narrow path climbed gently through the sleeping forest. Moonlight rested softly upon every stone, every fern, every fallen branch. The earth welcomed each quiet step. Nothing hurried, nothing delayed. The night unfolded exactly as it wished. Soon, the trees opened once again. Before them stood the highest ridge, overlooking the valley. Beyond it, the mountains stretched into the distance, layer after layer, soft blue silhouettes beneath the silver sky. The stars appeared brighter here, closer somehow, as though the heavens had gently lowered themselves to meet the earth. Haru stopped. He smiled. This is where the mountain sleeps. Ken looked quietly around. The mountain sleeps? Haru nodded. Not because it closes its eyes. He looked toward the great peaks, but because it has nothing left to prove. The words drifted away, carried softly into the endless night. Neither traveler spoke again. They simply stood together, watching, breathing, listening. The mountain did not ask to be admired. It did not ask to be understood. It simply rested beneath the stars, complete, whole, enough. Ken slowly lowered himself onto a broad, smooth rock warmed only by memory of the day's sun. Now, it held the coolness of the night. He leaned back gently. The stone supported him without effort. Above, the sky stretched farther than imagination. No beginning, no ending, only stars, quiet stars, patient stars, each one shining with silent kindness. A long breath. In, cool night air. Out, warm, soft, easy. Again, in, out. The rhythm no longer belonged only to him. It belonged to the mountain, to the forest, to the river, to the stars. Everything breathed together. Far below, the valley rested beneath a thin veil of moonlight. Tiny rooftops shimmered quietly. The little stream reflected the moon like a silver thread. The bamboo grove stood motionless. The old bridge crossed the river exactly as it had yesterday. The cedar seed rested beneath the earth. The empty boat drifted somewhere upon the sleeping lake. The fire pit remained peaceful beneath its blanket of ash. Every place they had visited still existed, still belonged, still rested, just as every lesson now rested quietly within Ken. Without effort, without repetition, without thought, the mountain remained silent. Its silence felt older than language, older than memory, older than fear. It had watched countless winters, countless springs, countless travelers, countless stories. None had remained forever. Yet the mountain welcomed everyone, without judgment, without attachment, without asking them to stay. Haru closed his eyes. His breathing was almost impossible to hear, very slow, very gentle. Like wind resting inside the branches of an ancient cedar, he whispered only once, "So may your heart." Nothing more. The silence carried the rest. A shooting star crossed the sky, bright, brief, beautiful, then gone. Neither Haru nor Ken made a wish. The moment needed nothing added to it. Its beauty existed simply because it appeared. And then it continued on. Clouds moved slowly across the distant horizon. Thin, silver, almost transparent. They passed before a few stars, then drifted onward. The stars quietly returned, exactly where they had always been. Ken's eyes became heavier, wonderfully heavy, not with sadness, not with weariness, with peace. His hands rested comfortably beside him. His shoulders had forgotten every burden. His jaw softened. His face became still. Even the small muscles around his eyes surrendered completely to rest. Another breath. In, out. Slower now. Longer. Gentler. The pauses between breaths widened, like quiet spaces between waves upon a calm shore. Nothing needed filling. The silence itself had become enough. The mountain did not dream of tomorrow. The stars did not remember yesterday. The river did not resist its current. The forest did not question the seasons. Everything simply rested inside this single moment. One peaceful moment, followed by another, then another. The moon slowly drifted toward the western peaks. Its light became softer. The shadows grew deeper. The night wrapped itself gently around the valley, like a warm blanket placed carefully over someone already asleep. Nothing disturbed the stillness. Nothing interrupted the peace. Far away, an owl called once. The sound floated across the mountains, then faded. Silence returned, even deeper than before, even kinder, even softer. Ken no longer followed thoughts. When one appeared, it dissolved almost immediately, like mist touched by the morning sun. There was nothing to solve, nothing to understand, nothing to carry, only breathing, only resting, only floating gently within the vastness of the quiet night. Above him, the stars remained, patient, faithful, endless. Below him, the earth remained, strong, steady, welcoming. Between them, he rested, held gently by both sky and earth, as though he had always belonged there, as though he had never truly been separate from either. Another breath, in, out, again, in, out, longer, softer, almost silent. The mountain slept beneath the stars. The valley slept beneath the mountain. The river sang softly through its dreams. The cedar trees rested. The bamboo rested. The lake rested. The meadow rested. The old gate stood open beneath the cherry tree. The seed slept peacefully beneath the earth. Everything was exactly where it needed to be. And so, very gently, very quietly, without effort, without expectation, Ken allowed himself to become part of that same stillness, not holding, not reaching, not searching, only resting, only breathing, only drifting deeper and deeper into the peaceful embrace of the endless night. The night had become wonderfully quiet, so quiet that even silence seemed to be resting. The mountains remained beneath the stars. The river continued its gentle song. The cedar forest breathed slowly. The bamboo grove stood peacefully beneath the moon. Every place along the journey remained exactly where it belonged. The old workshop, the weathered bridge, the quiet lake, the empty boat, the bamboo grove, the hill of gentle ashes, the open gate beneath the cherry tree, the sleeping meadow, the whispering forest, the flowing river, the mountain beneath the stars. None of them had disappeared. They simply rested, as all beautiful things eventually do. Haru remained beside Ken, not as a teacher, not as a guide, simply as another quiet traveler beneath the same sky. His breathing was slow, gentle, almost impossible to hear. The night no longer needed words. And so, when Haru finally spoke, his voice became softer than the breeze itself. If sleep has already found you, then let these words become part of your dreams. And if you are still awake, simply continue breathing. There is nowhere else you need to go tonight. A long silence followed. Comfortable, kind. The moon drifted lower, almost unnoticed. The stars continued shining, patiently, without asking to be admired, without asking to be remembered, simply offering their quiet light, far beyond the eastern mountains. Something almost impossible to notice had begun. Not sunrise, not yet. Only the faintest suggestion that somewhere beyond the horizon, morning already existed, still hidden, still waiting, still patient. The night did not resist it. The stars did not fear it. The moon did not hurry toward it. Everything trusted its own perfect time, just as your breathing needs no encouragement, just as your heartbeat needs no instruction, just as sleep never arrives by force, only by invitation. The cool air rested softly upon the valley. Tiny drops of dew gathered quietly upon the grass. Each one reflected the moon. Each one held a tiny piece of the night, for only a little while. Then, when morning came, they would quietly return to the earth. Nothing would be lost, only transformed. Perhaps the heart is much the same. Every joy, every sorrow, every goodbye, every beginning, each one arrives. Each one remains for a season. Each one gently changes into something else, without asking permission, without making a sound. The old cedar seed rested beneath the earth, invisible now, wrapped in darkness, doing nothing, growing anyway. No one could see it, no one could measure it. Yet life had already begun its quiet work. Perhaps healing has always been like that. Not loud, not dramatic, not hurried, simply unfolding beneath the surface. One peaceful moment at a time. The stream continued flowing. The empty boat continued drifting. The bridge continued waiting. The bamboo continued bending with the wind. The mountain continued resting beneath the stars. Nothing had reached an ending. Everything simply continued, in its own gentle rhythm. If your thoughts still appear, allow them to drift by, like clouds, like leaves, like reflections upon quiet water. They know the way. They do not need to be pushed. They do not need to be held. They will continue on. Just as every breeze eventually finds another valley, just as every river eventually finds the sea, take one slow breath, in, softly, comfortably, and now let it go, out, without effort, without trying to make it deeper, without wondering whether you are doing it correctly. Your breath has always known the way. You do not need to teach it, only trust it. Again, a gentle breath in, a peaceful breath out, another and another, each exhale becoming quieter, each inhale arriving naturally, the spaces between them growing soft, wide, peaceful, like the quiet distance between stars. Above, the sky remained endless. Below, the earth remained steady. Between them, you were always held. You always had been, even on the nights when you believed you were carrying everything alone. The earth carried you. The sky watched over you. The night patiently waited for your heart to become still. There is nothing left to remember tonight. Nothing left to solve. Nothing left to fix. Nothing left to explain. Nothing left to carry. Yesterday may rest. Tomorrow may wait. This moment is enough. Perhaps, somewhere deep inside, the backpack has become empty. The stones have returned to the earth. The knot has loosened. The bridge has been crossed. The empty boat has drifted away. The bamboo has bowed with the wind. The ashes have nourished new life. The gate has remained open. The valley has asked for nothing. The clouds have continued onward. The moon has trusted the dawn. The forest has remembered how to rest. The river has carried everything gently. The mountain has slept beneath the stars. And now, perhaps, you may rest as well. The eastern horizon slowly brightened, only slightly, barely enough to notice. The stars began disappearing, one by one, not because they were leaving, only because the light was quietly returning. No farewell, no sadness, only another gentle change, exactly as life has always moved. Haru looked toward the first hint of morning. He smiled. Not because the journey had ended, but because it never truly could. Every sunrise would begin another walk. Every evening would welcome another rest. Every breath would become another chance to begin again, softly, patiently, kindly. If sleep has already carried you into dreams, may they be gentle. If your eyes are only now becoming heavy, may they close without effort. If morning finds you later, may it find a heart that no longer needs to carry yesterday. Only today. Only this breath. Only this quiet beginning. The valley welcomed the first pale light. The river continued singing. The forest continued breathing. The mountain continued watching. And somewhere, beyond words, beyond stories, beyond every thought, peace remained exactly where it had always been, waiting, patiently, quietly, within you. The night is quiet, very quiet now. The valley rests beneath the last gentle stars. The river continues its soft song. The forest breathes. The mountains remain. The wind has grown still. Everything is exactly where it belongs, and so are you. Take one gentle breath in, and slowly let it go. Another, in, out. There is nothing you need to remember now, nothing you need to plan, nothing you need to finish. The day has already offered everything it wished to give. It is safe to let it rest. The moon has almost completed its journey. Far beyond the mountains, morning waits quietly. It does not hurry. It does not call your name. It simply waits, patiently, until the world is ready. And tonight, There is no need to meet tomorrow early. Tomorrow will always know how to find you. For now, only this breath, only this peaceful moment, only this gentle silence. Imagine the valley one last time, the old workshop resting peacefully beneath the cedar trees, the smooth wooden bowl quietly waiting upon the table, the ancient bridge stretching across the flowing river, the empty boat drifting gently across the sleeping lake, the bamboo grove swaying with the softest breeze, the old fire pit beneath the quiet hill, the tiny cedar seed resting beneath the earth, the open gate beneath the cherry tree, the moonlit meadow, the whispering forest, the silver river, the mountain beneath the stars. Every place remains. Every lesson remains. Nothing has been lost. Nothing needs to be held. Everything has found its home. Perhaps the traveler named Ken has already fallen asleep. Perhaps Haru has quietly returned to his little workshop before dawn. Or perhaps they are still walking somewhere beneath the stars, not searching, not teaching, simply walking, simply breathing, simply enjoying the endless kindness of another peaceful night, wherever they are. There is no need to follow them. Their journey belongs to them, your journey belongs to you, and your journey, for tonight, leads only toward peaceful rest. Feel the gentle weight of your body, supported completely. The earth beneath you asks for nothing. The night asks for nothing. Your breath asks for nothing. Even your thoughts have become wonderfully quiet. If one appears, let it float by, like a cloud, like a leaf, like moonlight dancing upon the river. No need to follow, no need to hold. Just watch it drift away until only stillness remains. Listen carefully. Perhaps you can still hear the river, softly, endlessly. Perhaps the cedar trees are whispering. Perhaps the breeze is moving through the bamboo once again. Perhaps somewhere, very far away, a night bird sings one final gentle note. Then, silence, kind silence, peaceful silence. The kind of silence that wraps gently around every tired heart. Take another slow breath, in, out, longer now, softer now, without effort, without thought. Your breathing already knows the way. Sleep already knows the way. You do not have to search for either of them. They have been walking quietly beside you all along. If your eyes are still open, allow them to grow heavy. If they have already closed, allow the darkness behind them to become soft, comfortable, safe. There is nothing hidden there, only quiet, only rest, only dreams waiting patiently to begin. The stars slowly fade, the sky gently brightens. The first birds will sing when the time is right. The dew will welcome the morning light. The river will continue its endless journey. The bamboo will greet another breeze. The cedar seed will continue growing beneath the earth. Without hurry, without effort, life will continue, quietly, beautifully, exactly as it always has. And when your own morning arrives, may your heart feel a little lighter. May your mind feel a little quieter. May your steps become a little gentler. May you remember that peace was never somewhere far away. It was always waiting, inside the next calm breath, inside the next quiet moment, inside the simple willingness to let go of what no longer needs to be carried. For now, there is nothing left to do, nothing left to become, nothing left to understand. Only rest, only breathe, only sleep. May your dreams be gentle. May your heart remain open. May your mind become as spacious as the night sky. May your spirit rest like the mountain beneath the stars, and may you awaken when morning comes, feeling quietly renewed until another evening, until another peaceful story, until another slow walk beneath the moon. Sleep well, dear traveler. Good night. The valley is quiet. The stars are fading. The river still flows, and all is well.